The hallway buzzed with laughter and chatter as students poured out of their classrooms, rushing toward lunch. At the far end of the corridor, a quiet girl walked slowly, clutching her books tightly against her chest. Her name was Emily Carter, the new girl at Ridgeway High. Her long sleeves brushed against her prosthetic arm, sleek, silver, and carefully crafted, but she tried to keep it hidden, hoping no one would notice. It was her first week at the new school, and she already felt the familiar sting of stares and whispers. "That's her," someone muttered. "The girl with the robot arm." Emily pretended not to hear. She focused on walking, one step at a time, counting the tiles under her shoes. But she didn't know that 3 boys were watching her from across the hallway: Jason, Mark, and Tyler, the self-proclaimed kings of the sophomore class. "Hey, Robo Girl," Jason called out, his voice sharp and mocking. The words sliced through the hallway noise, and suddenly, all eyes turned toward her. Emily froze. Her stomach twisted, and she wanted to disappear. "Nice arm," Tyler added, smirking. "Does it shoot lasers or something?" The laughter that followed burned hotter than any insult. Emily's lips trembled, but she said nothing. She had learned long ago that silence was safer. She tried to walk away, but Mark stepped in front of her, blocking her path. "Where you going, metal girl?" he sneered. He reached for her arm, the one she hid beneath her sleeve, and before she could stop him, he yanked the fabric back. Gasps rippled through the hallway as the glint of polished metal caught the light. Emily's face turned pale. "Leave me alone," she whispered, her voice shaking. But Jason only laughed harder. Come on, we just want to see how it works." His hand shot out, grabbing her prosthetic wrist. "Stop." Emily tried to pull back, but Jason twisted it too hard. A soft crack echoed as a piece of the joint came loose. Her book spilled to the floor, and she fell to her knees, clutching the broken arm that now hung limply at her side. The laughter died instantly. Jason's grin faded as the reality of what he'd done sank in. The hallway fell silent except for Emily's shaky breathing. A teacher's voice shouted from down the hall, "What's going on here?" But before anyone could answer, Emily whispered something that made Jason's blood run cold. "My dad's coming to pick me up," she said quietly, her eyes wet but steady. "He's Captain Daniel Carter." The name hit like thunder. Every student in Ridgeway knew that name, a decorated war hero, a man who had saved lives overseas, whose face had once been on every news channel. Jason's mouth went dry. He looked at the broken arm, then at Emily, realizing what he'd done, not just to a new girl, but to her. And for the first time, the bullies didn't laugh. The principal's office felt colder than usual that afternoon. Jason sat stiffly in the chair across from the desk, his leg bouncing nervously. Mark and Tyler sat beside him, silent for once. The broken piece of Emily's prosthetic arm rested on the table like evidence in a courtroom, its shiny metal surface reflecting their guilt. Principal Reynolds paced behind his desk, his jaw tight. "Do you boys have any idea what you've done?" he said sharply. "This isn't just a prank. You destroyed a medical device, something that helps her live a normal life." His tone dropped lower, heavier. "And that girl's father is on his way here." Jason swallowed hard. He'd heard of Captain Daniel Carter, everyone had. The man was a decorated Army veteran, known for surviving missions most wouldn't dare attempt. Even teachers whispered his name with respect. Jason glanced at the door, his palms sweating. "Sir, we didn't mean to." "Didn't mean to." The principal cut in. "You humiliated her in front of the entire school. And now you'll have to answer for it." Before Jason could respond, the office door opened. Emily stepped in quietly, her face pale but calm. A faint smell of motor oil clung to her sleeve, from the arm she tried to fix herself before coming in. Right behind her came a tall man in uniform. His boots clicked against the tile, his presence filling the room before he even spoke. Captain Daniel Carter. He didn't need to raise his voice. The silence that followed his arrival spoke louder than anything else. His gaze swept over the 3 boys, and for a brief moment, Jason felt like he couldn't breathe. The man's sharp eyes, carved from years of command, held a kind of authority that couldn't be faked. "Which one?" the captain asked quietly. Jason's throat tightened. He wanted to speak, to apologize, but his voice refused to come out. The captain turned to his daughter, who stood with her head down. "Emily," he said gently, "tell me what happened." Her voice was soft but steady. "They made fun of my arm," she said. "Then Jason broke it." Reynolds glanced nervously between them, ready to intervene if things went too far. But Captain Carter didn't raise his tone. He walked over to the table, picked up the broken piece of metal, and studied it silently for a long moment. Then he looked at Jason. "You see this?" he said, holding the damaged joint. "This cost more than most people's cars. But that's not the point. The point is respect, something you boys clearly never learned." Jason's stomach churned. I'm sorry, sir," he stammered. "I didn't." Carter's voice remained calm but firm. "You didn't think. You saw something different and decided it was weak. That's not how strength works. Emily looked up at her father then, her eyes glistening. For the first time, Jason realized that what he'd broken wasn't just a piece of metal, it was a part of someone's courage. And standing before her father, he understood what real power looked like: quiet, steady, and absolutely unshakable. The next day dawned grey and still, as if even the weather sensed the unease lingering over Ridgeway High. The news of what had happened had spread through the school like wildfire. Everyone knew about Emily Carter, the new girl whose prosthetic arm had been broken, and whose father had walked into the principal's office like a storm in uniform. When Emily arrived that morning, she could feel the shift. The usual laughter and noise in the hallway dimmed as she walked by. Eyes followed her, but not with ridicule this time, with guilt, curiosity, and a strange kind of respect. Her prosthetic arm gleamed faintly under the hallway lights. Captain Carter had fixed it himself the night before, his hands moving with precision and quiet anger. "You don't need to hide who you are," he had told her. "Not anymore." As she reached her locker, she noticed Jason standing there, waiting. He wasn't with Mark and Tyler for once. His shoulders slumped, his backpack hung loosely, and the usual smug grin was gone. When Emily saw him, her steps slowed, her guard instinctively rising. "Emily," he started quietly. "Can we talk?" She didn't answer, just stared at him, at the boy who had broken her arm, and laughed while she cried. The memory still stung. Jason shifted nervously. "I'm not gonna make excuses. What we did was," he stopped himself, swallowed, then said it plainly. "It was awful. I'm sorry." Emily blinked, unsure what to say. "You think sorry fixes it?" He nodded slowly. "No, but I don't know what else to say. I've been thinking about it all night. When your dad came in, I realized what kind of person I've been." There was no sarcasm in his voice, no mockery, only a raw honesty that startled her. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Students walked past, some slowing down to glance at the unexpected scene, the bully, and the girl he had hurt. Finally, Emily said quietly, "You broke something that meant a lot to me. But what hurt more wasn't the arm. It was the way everyone laughed." Jason's eyes dropped. "Yeah, I know. I can't take that back." He reached into his backpack and pulled out something small, a folded piece of paper. "I talked to the robotics teacher," he said. "He said maybe we could organize something, like a fundraiser, to help kids who need prosthetics. If you'd want to help run it." Emily stared at him, stunned. She hadn't expected this, not from him. "Why?" she asked. Jason shrugged. "Because I want to make it right. Because your dad looked at me like he could see everything I'd done wrong. And I don't want to be that person anymore." Emily hesitated, then took the paper. Her expression softened just a little. "We'll see," she said, turning to walk away. But as she did, Jason called after her, his voice low but sincere. "Hey, Emily, your dad's a hero. But so are you." For the first time since she arrived at Ridgeway, Emily smiled, not out of politeness, but because for once, she actually believed it. A week later, Ridgeway High was transformed. The gym buzzed with life, banners, tables, and students everywhere. A big sign hung above the stage: "Rebuild Hope, Prosthetics for Kids Fundraiser." What had started as Jason's apology had turned into something far bigger. Teachers, parents, and students all showed up to support. Even the local news station had come to cover the event. Emily stood near the main booth, her silver arm gleaming under the lights. For once, she wasn't trying to hide it. Instead, she was using it, helping kids try on demo prosthetics from a visiting company, showing them how the fingers moved, how it worked. Each child's amazed smile made her heart lighter. Across the room, Jason was busy carrying boxes and setting up donation jars. His face was flushed from the effort, but there was a calm focus about him that hadn't been there before. He no longer looked like the loud, careless boy who mocked others for attention. When he caught Emily's eye, he gave a small nod. She returned it, silently acknowledging how far they'd both come. Later, as the crowd gathered for the opening speech, Principal Reynolds took the stage. "What began as a mistake," he said, "has turned into a movement of compassion. Our students have raised more than $3,000 to help children who can't afford prosthetic limbs. That's the kind of change that makes a school proud." Applause filled the room, echoing off the gym walls. Emily smiled, but her attention shifted when she saw her father standing quietly at the back, in uniform. Captain Carter didn't like attention, but today he'd come for her. When their eyes met, he gave her a nod, not of pity or protection, but of pride. After the event ended, Jason walked over. "It went better than I thought," he said, running a hand through his hair. "Guess people actually care more than they act like they do. They just need someone to remind them," Emily said softly. Jason hesitated, then added, "I never said thank you for giving me another chance." Emily looked at him, then at the kids laughing with their new prosthetic demos. "You earned it," she said simply. Captain Carter joined them then, his presence steady as ever. You two did something good today, he said. Mistakes don't define people, what they do after does. He looked at Jason with the same piercing eyes as before, but this time, there was no anger. You learned that the hard way. That's worth something. Jason nodded, his voice quiet. Yes,
sir. As the sun dipped through the gym windows, its light caught Emily's prosthetic arm, scattering silver reflections across the floor. She lifted it slightly, feeling its strength, not just in the metal, but in herself. For the first time since she'd moved to Ridgeway, she didn't feel like the new girl or the girl with the prosthetic. She felt like Emily Carter, someone who turned pain into purpose. And as the last of the laughter faded, she knew that sometimes, even the cruelest moments could build the strongest hearts.